I'll button up and look proper.
Good. Welcome to XpoNorth. This is a very special one because it's the evening edition. Don't know if you can tell with the fairy lights. Dave, it is not your evening, it's your afternoon. You're joining us basically halfway around the world. Hello.
Hello.
Dave, we're so excited to have you on the show. I really wanted you on the show because A, you're doing a workshop for XpoNorth, which is on May 1st, all about programming and game programming. This tonight's going to be a little different. We are going to dive into a mind-blowing idea you have, and it complements the May 1st. So if you guys are interested in this, check out the May 1st one, and if not, just keep on watching because it will blow your mind too. Dave, can you explain to us a little bit about first who you are and what you do?
I've mostly been a game developer most of my career, engineer. It's been a mix of coding and producing with a bit of representation and teaching. Right now I'm mostly coding and I serve on advisory boards. I'm currently coding a pipeline for a 3D body scanner.
That's very cool. That is really, really cool. And can I ask a little bit before we dive into your vector economy idea? Can you give us a little context? Where this idea came from? Why?
Oh yeah, where it came from? Well, okay, so the big famous games I worked on were Doom and the original Doom and Quake back in the day, and that was like the start of my career. And it's an odd way to start your career. The rest of it, I got lots of people saying, "Oh my God, I fucking love Doom. I love Quake."
So I've heard of Doom and Quake. They're amazing. You probably got berated with people who are like obsessive fans of these games.
Yeah, so you get look. It was great getting all the love, but you get a lot of compliments in the form of, "Oh my God, my GPA went and shot itself in the corner that year," or "I lost my girlfriend over it," or stuff like that. And it was kind of funny in my 20s and 30s. And then after a while, I started integrating the area under the curve and saw that I was causing a lot of wasted time and a lot of swollen guts.
Yeah.
And I just started to wonder, why were we motivated to make something that was purely for entertainment? Even then in the 90s, when there were so many issues we had out there, why were we focused on entertaining people with some of the, we had some of the brightest engineering talent in the game industry at the time. And it occurred to me it was partly because of how we're motivated by our current system of commerce and this idea of scalar money, where we essentially take the price or the value of something, we reduce it to a single number, which we call the price, and that's what we do everything for, is like, let's make the money from selling the thing at a price, right? And
can I ask Dave really quickly,
yeah,
that idea that's connected between the question of why are we creating things that basically waste time? They're just pure entertainment. There's nothing, it's fluff. There's nothing underneath it.
No, there's plenty of reason for that if you're short on entertainment, right? But especially today, right? There's about 1,000 games a day that ship every day, right? Most of them will never be seen by anybody. And there's a tremendous excess. And then we've got this enormous library of great games that you could play. You could play a new game every day for the rest of your life and you'd never run out of games, right? And they'd be great. And so you have to ask, why do we need more, right? And what do we really need? And is our system of commerce actually motivating us to make the things we really need? And I came to the conclusion I think everybody's coming to now, which is that it's not really doing the trick. And so I started thinking about, like, well, what's a practical way to replace this? And so that's where my vector money idea came from, of representing value in what are called long heterogeneous vectors, millions of elements, most of them zeros, but little spikes here and there for the actual values and liabilities that your product or service creates.
Now, I know the people who are not laymen, who understand code, are going to hate me for this question, but I bear with me, because last time I heard the word vector was in math class, and there was a little dot and there's a line and an arrow. So when you say vector, what are you thinking of? What are you thinking of?
Yeah, so scalar is a fancy word for one number. Vector is a fancy word for more than one number, and that's literally all it means. Okay, and the rest of it is just to make us feel smart, right? So we represent price with one number, and as a result, like if I reduce the price of a pomegranate to one number, I don't know anything about the supply chain of that pomegranate. I don't know who it's keeping alive. I don't know if there's some farmer who's beating his daughter on a regular basis. I don't know if there's child labor involved. I don't know if there's, maybe it's labeled organic, but it's not really organic and they're putting some kind of horrible pesticide on it. It's just mystery pomegranate, right? And all that we do at our gameplay mechanic at the point of purchase is this pomegranate too much or is it within my budget to buy, right? That's the only thing we're asked to judge really in a formal way. And so this is just going to happen when you reduce all of this information to a single number. It's like the world's shittiest MP3 codec, just taking it down, crunching it down to the worst. Or maybe even a better example would be like a JPEG of your face, right? Mm-hmm. If you took the average colors of the screen and said, sort of a dirty beige, right? And said, Dave, you look like dirty beige. That's kind of how I think of you, as dirty beige. Yeah, that's the one value of your image. When I think of your face, I think dirty beige. That's overly reductive, right? And the same thing happens in every transaction we have in commerce. Is it's this overly reductive decimation down to a single price, where you lose all the other information, and then you have to sort of spackle that information back in with marketing and branding and crap like that, which is just not easy to verify whether the veracity of it. So that's what kind of got me on the subject.
So let's stick with the pomegranate because I find that very helpful. So if the pomegranate's not going to be £2.50, which is what I can afford, but it's going to have some kind of value put on it that's given by the vector economy that has to do with its story, maybe the pain it caused, or the tax of the earth, or
the jobs it creates.
Or the jobs it creates as something positive. What does it look like? So when I'm buying a pomegranate now, how do I buy it?
Okay, so that's a great question. I was waiting for that. So this basically presupposes that you stick cameras everywhere. So you essentially have to rip off the Band-Aid of privacy as an inherent good and basically come to terms with privacy being a way to emulate freedom through information hiding, right? Now, if we can have freedom with all the photons bouncing off of us and other people able to see the photons, that's even better, right? Now we can feel free to do what we want without fear of reprisal from other people seeing it, right? We don't have laws that protect us quite that way. So information, unfortunately, right now is power. It's not responsibility yet. Unless you've signed a big NDA, then information becomes responsibility. NDA is short for non-disclosure agreement. Yeah. And so the idea is that you have lots of cameras watching everything we do, right? And instead of saying, here's this liability and let's feel nervous about everybody watching, if you want to watch that video, and it is broadcast, but if you want to watch that video, you have to legally agree to be responsible for the wishes of the person in that video, right? Mm-hmm. So for instance, if I'm on camera and I say, hey, look, feel free to use these cameras to track the goods that I buy, right? The goods that we exchange, then great, it's fine. But don't use that video to, look at me parading around the place naked and then show it to my parents. I don't want that use of the video, right? Yeah. So the idea is that you specify your wishes with the video, you enact laws to protect people. And the great thing about having cameras everywhere in that particular case is that in addition to saying, oh, okay, well, now we have all this great information, which we could also use to track COVID, for example. Mm-hmm. But now that we have all that information, we can also verify who's watching what, right? So are you honoring the requests of this other person who's also on video? Everybody's on video, so there's glass houses everywhere. Mm-hmm. Now you can basically say, hey, you want to watch Dave in his apartment? then let's find out if you're honoring that. So back to the pomegranate example, right? So now that you've got cameras tracking everybody, you essentially specify what your wishes are, right? To this back end system. Those wishes being shelter, nutrition, entertainment, whatever it is, right? Just like you express your wishes when you go shopping by buying things, right? But instead you express them explicitly. And one of my wishes might be to be in knee deep in pomegranates, right? Because I love my pomegranates in my cereal.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Who doesn't love pomegranates in the cereal? So once I've specified that, everybody else is also specifying what they want. And hopefully, oh dear God, hopefully somebody out there with their kid is like, my kid wants to learn how to make video games. And boy, if only there was someone to teach him, right? And then, oh God, I can do that. That provides value, right? And then hopefully we can use this fact that I'm providing value and somebody else is providing value for me to create a pomegranate to essentially motivate me using AR glasses, simple AR glasses.
Hold on, Dave, you're going to have to pause. Do you mind pausing? Because I need some.
No.
Okay. So I get why. So my head went in a different direction. I was like, okay, the reason why we're starting about privacy and cameras and tracking those behaviors is because there's no way for the pomegranate to tell us what's happened to it. Like we've
got to see what happened to the pomegranate.
You need to see to understand what the different vectors are that inherit. So now tell me how is the skills that you're offering someone else connected to your relationship with the pomegranate?
That's a great question. So the whole point of money in the first place was to solve the barter problem, right? So I might be a peanut farmer, you're a chicken farmer, and then we've got an artist friend, right? As a chicken farmer, you've got a great Thai chicken peanut recipe. You really want my peanuts. I am unfortunately a vegan, so I have no use for your chickens. But I happen to like this artist over here who provides great, ironic, fancy rabbit art. So I can, and she loves eating chickens. So you can give her a chicken, I can get her art, I can give you peanuts. Now we've got a three-way thing. It works. But Jesus Christ, setting this thing up was sort of a pain in the butt. So money solves this problem by having a medium of exchange, so we can just give each other what we think they're worth, and not have to do the crazy three-way exchange. But the thing is, now we have computers, and to do these exchanges, it uses something called graph theory, right? And computers can do graph theory to their heart's content, and they can solve these incredibly complex networks of needs and giving each other what they want, right? So the original purpose of money, a medium of exchange, is no longer needed, right? We needed it back then because we didn't have computers. Now we have computers. So we can actually just skip money and go straight to the exchange of goods and services. You see what I'm saying?
I do. Okay, what about the scenario in which you're talking to the wrong person? I'm a filmmaker. What do I know about economics?
Not at all.
What about when you have a scenario in which we've taken money to the point where it's so abstract, it's off any kind of gold standard, even connected with services. It's completely abstract. And one benefit of that is it allows us to create things that don't exist, or use it when I don't have skills. I just might have an idea. Or my chickens have stopped laying, so I want to pivot. And I might need, and I don't have any skills to offer in the present, but in the future, I can picture this thing I want to build.
Sure.
How does that work? How does that work with vector?
That's a great question. Okay, so the way it would work today is that you would start making a business plan and pitching your ass off for months and months, and maybe get money, maybe not, but almost certainly get screwed on the terms somehow. It takes anywhere from, say, 3 months to 12 months to raise funding with our current system. Generally, your mileage may vary, but in this system, you could literally do it as soon as the system determined that there was a strong enough need and that the risk calculation made sense, right? So for instance, if you're saying, I've got this vision to do something, and that vision that you want to do is be a trapeze artist, because boy, do we desperately need to see Jessica Fox as a trapeze artist. That might be harder to justify because you don't have a whole lot of experience being a trapeze artist. And the system has asked everybody else what they want, and nobody is saying, "Oh my God, trapeze, dying for it," right? But if on the other hand you're saying, "Hey, I want to make a film," then the system's like, "Oh wow, she's made lots of those. We can see exactly what she's talking about." And then if it's like, "Hey, I want to make something about the naturalists," oh, okay, well we've got a waiting, eager group of people keen to hear about this. Okay, let's go ahead and affect that, right? So the roundabout answer is that you essentially have a back-end server, what you can think of as a gameplay server, because this really is exactly how massively multiplayer online games work, right? Is they're essentially designed to challenge you, to tempt you to do something, but they're not telling you to do anything. It's just tempting you, right? And so there's all these NPCs with these little quests, like if you could just help my mother, or if you could go find my son who got lost in the woods, or if you could go fetch me some wild berries, I can make this potion. That's exactly. But we don't say you will get the goddamn wild berries. We just say if you do this, and then there's this sort of this implication that there's some kind of reward on the back end. It's kind of random, and it's kind of usually fun in some way, right? You can do exactly the same thing in AR by essentially just teasing people towards the things that they've already said they want, right? And then you can surprise them. It's very much like being a dungeon master, only instead of having players that are playing D&D, your players are people living their lives, right? And they're playing the game of wanting to be motivated to do the things that are helpful to themselves and to other people, right? So it essentially skips that part. And instead, it presents you an interface to tempt you to do things in a piecemeal way towards the goals that you want to achieve. So, short answer: if you want to make a film, you just start making it as long as the system teases you to do it. Right? You say, "This is what I want to do." It goes to the back end and figures out how many people want this film from Jessica Fox, right? And it figures out, oh shit, a lot of people want this film from Jessica Fox. And so it will start redirecting resources towards you because there is this strong will for it, right? So now it can essentially shape your life into an adventure game wherein you get these little rewards for each piece of like writing the treatment and writing the script and then casting the film and then doing your location work. And so you can essentially pace it like a game. You can pace the project like a game. So essentially gamifies commerce and governance is how that's done.
Dave, that's so interesting. And does this exist in game format? Are people familiar with this in game land and not familiar with this in...
Everybody is familiar with this intrinsically if they were raised by good parents. Okay. Now, I know that you and I happen to be lucky enough to have enjoyed this, but what every good parent does at some point, usually many points during the day, is that they create games for their kids. So the kid may say, "Can I skip my piece tonight?" Well, I'll tell you what, if you help your sister with her math, then you can skip your peas and go straight to the ice cream. So there's these little tit for tat things, right? Like, you know what, pick up the newspaper, take out the trash. You're doing services for each other. And in a healthy family, there usually isn't an exchange of money, right? So you're not you don't show up for breakfast and, if your mom makes you bacon and eggs and you go, "You know what, this isn't competitive. I can go down for this much more cost-effective mom who, for 50% off, she'll give me sugar-coated sugar bombs cereal, which is what I really want, and I don't have to pay you for this bacon and eggs." That you just grow up a fucked up kid if you did. If money was changing hands inside of families. Unfortunately, money does change hands inside of some families. And with the exception of allowance, which helps you interface with the outside world a little better, usually there's a family member or a couple of family members that are keeping money kind of on the outside of the family a little bit, as best they can anyway. And you see this at companies too, right? Inside a company, there's these company core values. But if I'm a programmer, I'm not going to put marketing all over the wall saying for limited time only 25% off of visits to my office to get bugs fixed, right? Because the walls would be plastered in marketing garbage, and doing these little ugly transactions in the office. It doesn't make sense. So you push that to the outside and you keep it out. And in fact, I found that money is sort of an invasive gameplay mechanic. It wedges itself into any system that has a crack it can exploit, and it starts to widen that crack. And this is why when money gets into politics deep enough and it starts to widen and widen, it's really hard to get it out again. And so, yeah, this is kind of how it works. You basically push scalar money to the outside. You keep the vector economy on the inside. Now, parents can keep a vector money economy going where they're using really subtle, complex little factors in whether Timmy can skip his peas or not. Like, he's a little shit this morning. You got to use his goddamn peas. But they're weighing it sort of on the fly. They're doing that quintessentially human thing of making that judgment call at the last second of like, does this make sense? Does it not make sense? So we're all kind of intrinsically familiar with it just from being inside of healthy companies or healthy families. But the problem is it doesn't scale, right? If you have a large family, some of the kids start getting away with stuff and you're not really keeping track of all of them. If it becomes a really large company.
That's where you need the cameras.
Yeah, well, but what typically happens at the company is they start having forms and you have to fill out the forms and doing the applications. And then it becomes this sort of machine and it feels kind of overwhelming. You lose some of the spontaneity and the joy of just doing things spontaneously because the guy next to you just needs help, right? Which is the natural way to respond to things. But now we can actually make games at scale to make it feel more like you're chasing this kind of like new adventure that's customized to you and sort of spontaneous.
Dave, I love this. And I'm really sorry, we're going so over time and there's so many things I want to ask you. So is there anything else you'd want to leave us about the vector economy?
Just that it's what's coming. It's what we've had. It's what's coming next. And I encourage people, this really isn't news, but I encourage people to think about the full spectrum of benefits and liabilities to the products and services they're making, and whether they're really necessary, right? Just try to keep in mind, there's this kind of global threat to the planet of climate change. There's this current smaller global threat of COVID-19. Reframe things a little and see whether what you're proposing really makes sense in this world where we have real emergencies.
I'm into that. Dave, thank you so much for joining. I wish I was there in person, but this is second best, and we're really excited about your workshop on May 1st.
Oh, good. I look forward to it. And to clarify, it's a game production workshop, not a programming workshop. You don't have to know how to code.
And here's to vectors.
Yes, to vectors. L'chaim.
L'chaim. Cheers, Dave.
Cheers.